Hello and welcome to the second season of the No Bullshit Property Podcast, brought to you by Cert Property.
I'm Howard.
And I'm Paul, and today we're talking to Paul Nicholson from the Nicholson Group to discuss the current landscape and challenges of being a professional landlord. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good to be here.
Before we get started with today's episode, just a quick reminder to check out our previous episodes to give you an insight into our approach to transforming property management in the ever-growing build-to-rent sector and how we're building the sustainable communities of the future.
We always expect you to trip up over that tongue twister, but you nailed it every time.
So, before we introduce you, Paul, we normally talk about the latest market news, and I think the biggest thing that's happened in the last few weeks is the announcement of the budget.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to run through some of the key points, and then we'll discuss how this impacts the sector. So a new housing package will include 500 million in new funding for the Affordable Homes Programme, which increases it in total to 3.1 billion. That's the biggest annual budget for affordable housing in over a decade. This brings total investment in housing supply to over 5 billion and supports the delivery of tens of thousands of new homes. There's 3 billion of additional support which will be provided to small medium enterprises and the build to rent sector by expanding existing housing guarantee schemes to support a strong and diverse private housing market. The budget's also began the government's reform of business rates to help level the playing field for high streets across the country. As from 2026 to 27, permanently low tax rates for retail, hospitality and leisure properties will be introduced. This will be funded sustainably by introducing a higher multiple for the most valuable properties, including distribution warehouses used by online giants. To support the transition, the Chancellor has also announced a 40% relief for retail, hospitality and leisure up to a cap of 110,000 per business. The small business multiplier will also be frozen next year to protect against inflationary increases. This support is worth over 2.4 billion over the next 5 years. 1/3 of business properties will continue to pay no business rates because of small business rates relief. The government will provide 46 million of additional funding to support recruitment and training of 300 graduates and apprentices into local planning authorities. And stamp duty land tax on second homes and build to rent increases from 3% to 5%. It's just a very quick round.
I was going to say, you should probably do the next budget announcement. That was good. Good delivery.
So, thoughts?
I think, for me, the important one there, although there's not much detail further on it yet, is the funding announced for SME developers. Mm-hmm. It's a theme that I've mentioned on a few podcasts about being an SME developer, the challenges that are faced in an industry that is really dominated and easier for giants. So really, really important that the government are seeing that, and there's going to be funding support, but the devil will be in the detail on it, I think. We need to know exactly what that support looks like. But great that it's in the field of vision from my point of view. And the other one, obviously, the SDLT increase. That's another important one, particularly, given that we're selling property as well as renting it. I think one thing for me, obviously that's a bit of a negative headline. One thing for me is that our effective property transaction costs in the UK are still low compared to a lot of other countries in Europe, other advanced economies in the world. So actually, whilst it looks like a bit of a negative, we're still relatively cheap compared to a lot of other places out there to invest into property. So not as negative once taken in context. Any thoughts from you on any of those?
Yeah, I think the stamp duty increase is one of the main ones, especially for the investor. Mm-hmm. It's going to, is it going to alter where people look to invest? So they got to start flooding up towards the north where property prices are cheaper, so the SDLT increase isn't as much. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a few different implications that we think could come through off that.
Yeah.
Are people going to start trying to renegotiate prices to account for that? Mm-hmm. Will yields still work, etc. Mm-hmm. Especially when you look at I say the lower price properties are say £150,000, but compared to buying something at 500,000, that's quite a big additional cost now up front. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see where investors do look.
Yeah.
But also that stamp duty is based just on residential.
It is, yeah.
So is it now going to encourage commercial investment or people dipping into conversions, permitted development rights? We've got to see a lot more commercial activity coming on. Because obviously acquisition costs won't be as much if you're buying a commercial property.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Indeed.
And picking out of the couple of the things that we've talked about in previous episodes, so I think the business rates relief is a welcome sign for the hospitality industry that we discussed last episode, and then the funding into the planning system.
Yep.
And training up recruitment and graduates, which we've talked about in quite a lot of detail on previous episodes. So that's a welcome.
Yeah, there's definitely some welcome elements. The government obviously committed to getting Britain building, and the housing targets they've set are ambitious. So, again, good to see the first signs of how they're going to do that in this wider planning reform. Again, more devil to be in the detail on that. But yeah, not as bad as everyone thought it might have been, certainly from a property perspective anyway.
Yeah, there's only the odd, obviously CGT's increased in some areas, hasn't it?
Yeah. But we knew there was going to be some stings in this one, didn't we? So, yeah. But all in all, set out some good support for the housing industry.
Okay, so on with today's episode, and to introduce you, Paul. Well, do you want to start by telling us a bit about yourself and your role at Nicholson Group?
Right, so I'm the founder and CEO of Nicholson Group. I originally set out as a property solicitor, so I was specialising in property and finance. I was doing a lot with developers, larger national house builders, etc. Saw an opportunity, it was back 2010 when house prices were slightly different to what they are now. So that's how I ended up getting into the property market. Originally, I started just buying smaller terrace, semi-detached properties where, you didn't need too much management intensive, so I could carry on with my day job. But I soon fell out of love with the day job and went into more management intense properties, which is eventually I ended up leaving the legal sector.
Very
good. And so you've built up a business as a landlord and a developer, basically.
Yeah, so I started, buying houses that didn't need much doing originally. And then, we were coming out of the crash about 2010, 11, 12, and we started ramping up our investment. And as I was a solicitor at the time, I could readily get hold of finance. So we started snapping up a lot of converted mansions into apartments that were in bad condition. So I cut my teeth on doing terraced houses, small blocks of apartments, and then we led up to where we are today. In about 2016, 17, I had quite a lot of, his original stock we'd renovated in Liverpool, but that market got intensively competitive. So we then looked to convert office buildings and retail buildings, and we did our first one in St Helens, and ever since then we've developed, refinanced and put them in our portfolio. We haven't sold any, and we don't plan on either, especially the way property prices are looking. It's a very long-term view that we're taking.
Yeah. Okay. So it's very relevant for the SDLT increase, really. That's not shaking your view and putting you off committing further funds to...
because we're buying commercial. So the SDLT we won't see, and as I say, everything's within group structures. So when we do transfers from developer co into our opco, the landlord, they're all in the same group. So the SDLT hasn't really implicated us, and we're not planning on selling anything going forward either.
Very good, very good. So you've been on a journey there as a landlord, refurbing properties, starting small, growing into bigger things. What's been your biggest challenge on that journey, or what's been the thing most difficult to come to grips with, going from what is obviously a very structured environment as a solicitor, and then property, certainly renovations on a smaller scale, dealing with builders and all of that sort of thing? People.
Yeah, absolutely. My brother's in IT, and I always say you pick the right industry talking to the computer. It's trying to get people to come and believe in your vision, and that is by far the hardest thing that there is.
Yeah.
And that's on all fronts. You've got tenants that you're dealing with, clients, your own staff, subcontractors, councils, planners. It's people's the hardest challenge.
Yeah. And for you, managing these different stakeholders and relationships, what's been your what's been the route that you found to be successful in managing these challenges?
Trying to use some empathy and dealing with people, at which I was not very good at the start. So there's a lot of kicking and screaming on my behalf, which just caused me more aggravation than it did if I'd dealt with people probably in a different light from the beginning. So very much trying to deal with people on that level and trying to get them to relate to what the problems are, etc. So that's been quite useful there, turning the corner. But yeah, and building your own team, that's is extremely difficult. Trying to get people to buy into your vision, and as a leader, it's you trying to communicate that vision with them. Which sometimes it is a struggle because you've got a million things going on. We are still a small business, so you're still wearing 10 different hats at once and trying to juggle, and time commitment. Sometimes it is hard taking that time, but you do need to take the time to tell people where you're trying to go, etc., and explain to them where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the challenges that the industry's faced over the last few years is resourcing and people and the quality of people. So, and relevant to what we were talking there about the budget, the government committing to invest in getting people into the planning industry. So, is that a challenge that you found in terms of the people out there, whether it be trades or management or whatever?
Yeah, especially with trade. I don't know if it's because the time saved, etc., but there's definitely a difference from the older trade to the new coming through trade. The old school guys were very much spit and sawdust and just get on with it, and I did churn out a good quality of work. The younger contractor coming through, you've got to be careful, I think, to make sure that you're working with the right contractor and have the right protections in place to check the quality and payment schedules, etc., when you are developing, whether that's a terraced house or a large development, making sure that there's still, retentions in place. I think it's very important. Yeah.
Do you think there's anything we could be doing better to attract people into the industry?
I don't know what the quality of training's like in colleges, for example. I know we've had some apprentices earlier on our developments, and what they were tasked with doing as part of their portfolio, from to be in the industry didn't seem too taxing. I think there probably could be perhaps a higher threshold that they need to pass before they get the qualifications.
Yeah. No, I mean that is something in the industry that it's difficult to attract people in, but also keep the people that have got the skills and find that balance. You're trying to bring new people in, but you need them to be effective immediately. So yeah, it's finding that balance between it.
And I find especially the way the industry is right now, it's so buoyant and there's such a shortfall in trades. There's people who are willing to pay some significant money to get jobs finished. And at the lower end of the market, where we're not building 200 apartments, 300 apartments, sometimes it's hard trying to compete with some of the day rates being offered, etc. So the good staff you do have, sometimes can leave.
You can lose. That's it. That's the difficulty.
And the good staff are never short of work. So they're never looking for work. So trying to get them to come in. So it's a catch-22.
Yeah. So as an SME, challenges there. Staff. What are other challenges as an SME in the industry?
I think because of our track record and portfolio, so I'll say we've got nearly 300 apartments and houses, funding has been okay for us.
Right.
But I've heard of other developers that can be hard to come by. We have not had that. But our main ones is people. And then obviously as the portfolio's grown, management, is getting more and more intensive, and with the new bill that's just gone through, I see that being even more intensive. So I think it's not just the way we are structured. Obviously you've got the construction, but then we manage them. So we've got two departments, and both are quite intense at the moment.
So the new bill, referring to the Building Safety Act,
the rent reform.
The rent reform bill. Sorry, So again, challenges for SMEs. We've spoken 2 bills there haven't we? In terms of challenges, but managing that as a burden, again, thoughts on that going forwards, both Building Safety Act and the Rent Reform Bill?
I mean, from the Building Safety Act, we bring in advisors to help us with a lot of that. HSE, health and safety execs. We have them advisors. We have architects, etc., to help us navigate through them. The rent reform, obviously, we are managing that in house, so I think that will be an impact, and I think it'll have a big impact across the industry. I think it looks like, I think it's a good thing. I think there's quite a lot of positives. I think the rogue landlord will be gone. But also I think the smaller landlords, will either maybe be looking to dispose of their smaller portfolios or putting them into managing agents, because it is going to create quite a lot of an admin burden.
Yeah.
And there's a lot, and if you do miss any little holes, that I think it could be costly.
No, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is trying to professionalise the industry, isn't it? And it's obviously a difficult balance to strike between regulations, professionalising the industry, and then going too far and making it difficult for SMEs. Because, like you say, there is quite a lot of admin burden.
You see, like Lloyd's now are in the sector.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like the Blackstones, etc. Is that where it's trying to push the rental market?
Yeah.
But there's a big role that the SMEs play in providing rental accommodation.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be thought through.
Yeah. Do you see a future for the kind of mom and pop landlords out there?
I think the amateur or accidental landlord, I think that could be hard. When you've got a certain size portfolio, you do benefit from economies of scale.
Yeah.
If you've got 200 houses, but I think they get the person with 2, 3, 5 houses, and you've got your 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that will work going forward.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting to see how that then impacts on the market. Does that mean that there's a lot of housing stock released back to the owner-occupier market? Does that put a downward pressure on property values, because all of a sudden there's lots more properties coming back? I think it's going to be important where they come back as well. You said there about accidental landlords. I think there's probably quite a few people in the city here in Manchester, and probably similar in other cities, who have had to become landlords because they haven't been able to exit their property. So yeah, interesting on the dynamics of the market.
I think there will be a supply and demand shift.
Yeah.
Because I think obviously when this reform bill goes in, there'll be because some of them are like sleeping worries, aren't they? They're sleeping themselves into a problem. They might not be up on the latest issues in property. They might not know about this bill being passed, and all of a sudden you've got all these accidental landlords with or small ones, 2, 3 properties, and they all come to the market.
Yeah.
Now the new SDLT is in place at 5%. Do investors stay away? First time buyers going to go in there, but then it puts a pressure on people looking to rent at that sort of level as well. So yeah, I think there could be a change coming at that end of the market.
Yeah. Or, as you said, alternative is they pass it over to a more capable management company rather than trying to manage it themselves.
Yeah.
That's an alternative.
Yeah.
But of course, then you're paying the management fees and your net income. Does that end up looking like it's worthwhile? So it's going to be interesting to see from my point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any particular aspects of the bill that you welcome?
Well, I think again, it is cleaning up the industry, so to speak, isn't it? There are a few things in there where if you're currently operating as a professional, prudent landlord, a lot of it is stuff you're doing already.
Yeah.
So is it going to, there's obviously the ombudsman's going to be created, but we have our own managing, so we're already in an ombudsman, for example, ourselves. So I don't think that's going to affect much. The property portal's coming on, but we're already in Liverpool under the selective licensing anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's not going to be too dissimilar, and that is just providing your EICR certificates, your gas it. So it's stuff you're doing anyway, to be honest. Yeah. So if you are, I don't think it's going to be hugely, obviously the Section 21 abolishment, but how quickly that's going to come into play.
And what are your thoughts about the not having fixed term tenancies?
As a landlord, it's not ideal. If you take into account, a tenant leaves, you pay for all the decoration, any repairs, then the cleaning, making sure all your certificates, etc., in place. for example, you were paying an agent or to draft your contracts, and then 6 months later, you're doing it again, and next 6 months later. I mean, again, if you're a decent landlord or people moving out after 6 months, with the exceptions of life changes or they have to move, you've probably done something fairly wrong to have a tenant wishing to leave after 6 months constantly.
Yeah, good point. So, obviously been very successful in growing a business there. I've talked about some of the challenges. Some of the successes, what do you think's been a key to your success? Is it identifying properties that have got something, identifying a location? Is it your drive? Like, what do you think has been the keys to your success?
So I've always bought the next area, not the, they had that location, because obviously my budget wasn't there. I didn't buy that. So for example, when a lot of people were buying Sefton Park in Liverpool and Liverpool city centre, I was buying at the top of Edge Lane, which is one of the main ways into Liverpool in Kensington. But as part of that, I started researching on the planning portal, what planning permissions were in. And you could see the new retail park was coming, etc. Again, it was a longer period coming. But, I was picking up houses there for, say, 35,000. Some of them are valued up at 150 odd. Yeah, I've probably got about 100 of them around there now. So trying to find the next location I found, has helped, especially with the equity. And also I do a lot in-house. We are vertically integrated. Again, that doesn't suit everyone. I'm lucky in the sense that obviously I was able to do that through my legal training. So I understand administration, keeping files in order. I understand all the legal ramifications. If I was not in that industry to begin with, I probably wouldn't advise managing yourself. I mean, for example, before we've come in, I was on eviction this morning in a court, and in our contracts we put all the links for the how to rent booklet. But the judge originally was, well, you haven't provided the how to rent booklet to the tenant. But obviously the housing, the Ministry of Housing, they don't provide hard copies themselves, and it doesn't say you have to. So we had a debate in court this morning, thankfully we won. But again, that's a little thing by not ticking a box that somebody did have my training, knowing those clauses were in my contract, would have to start the whole possession process again, pay the court fees again. So you're talking, 4 or 5 months of lost rent, another £390, I think it is, in court. So it's if you didn't have that training, there is like thousands of pounds you can lose, where in reality, using a managing agent for the small fee that you're paying, it is worthwhile, especially if you've got a few properties, a couple of wrong ticks and you've lost £8,000.
I think sometimes people don't understand how complex the management side of it is, and you're right, there's good agents out there, but there's poor ones as well.
I think long gone are the days where an agent would literally just open a door, show someone round, then you'll take it, right, sign that, and then we'll collect the rent. It's far more than that,
and tenants demand more these days.
It.
The rental market's so competitive, and for what you guys sort of do with the amenities on offer, that's not something you could offer yourself, is it? It's a full-time big operation, and that's what tenants are demanding. So if you haven't got that time to give it the attention, then one, you've got to not be as competitive and offer a product that other people are, and as I say, the errors that you can make along the way, and they can cost people.
So talking about the current rental landscape, and obviously a lot of your properties are based in Liverpool, have you seen, I mean, certainly there's lots going on in Liverpool now, and there's lots in planning, build to rents coming up. Have you seen a change in what tenants are looking for?
I think there is a lot more, it depends. So when you're in the major cities, etc., there's a lot more amenity driven. I mean, I invest on the outskirts and develop on the outskirts. So we're in a maturing market that's not quite, Manchester city centre, Liverpool city centre. But if you look at what developers are offering now in, for example, Manchester city centre compared to what it was 10 years ago, there wasn't, community barbecues and table tennis and making sure that you've got the right commercial operators on the ground floor that add to the development. A lot of times with commercial in this market, you're just happy to get a tenant signed away. So again, someone putting developments together where there's a high volume of residential above it is having that right mix at the ground floor level. It's not simply just accepting any commercial tenant. So in those major cities, there's been a huge change, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I saw last week, I think it was Legal in General, and hopefully it is because I'm accrediting it to them, but they had announced that they were doing their first scheme where they were charging nil rent for the commercial units at ground floor with the residential above, because they wanted to attract the right tenants to place make and support what they're doing above, and create the right amenities for the community. So quite an interesting approach to that. We value the community and facilitating it more than a bit of rental income from the commercial units. So, but as you say, it's really important to do that and get the blend right to make it a place that people want to live.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the budget as well in tertiary locations, because I've got quite a few commercials part of our mixed use scheme. Obviously we're not in prominent cities, and they're extremely hard right now. And we have had a few commercial tenants over the past couple of years struggling with business rates, for example. It puts
utilities, business rates,
puts a real pressure on them. So hopefully that changes things, and again, that concept can feed its way down into town centres and peripheral locations where you can get a more of a, because at the moment, it's you're counting your lucky chickens if you manage to get a commercial tenant in some of those locations at the moment. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if it does catch on, particularly where, like I say, they're Legal in General, hopefully it's them, controlling a big enough portfolio in one location to make that worthwhile, which is often difficult. Big city centres, lots of different commercial landlords who are obviously in it to make a profit. So you've got to charge a rent for your ground floor commercial. But we've seen a trend recently of a lot of local authorities buying shopping centres in town centre locations to enable redevelopment. And whether that view gets taken there, that, well, it's about creating the right environment in this town centre, and therefore we're not just going to accept the highest rent from the strongest covenant to do that, and whether there is a bit more of that sort of thinking for creating the right place. There's a few examples we've looked at recently in Greater Manchester and Merseyside of towns that want to evolve that, I think would really benefit from the local authority who are controlling chunks of it going, well, actually, do you know what? We'll support local businesses here. Someone's got, a local guy's got an idea for a new restaurant concept. Well, you can have free rent here, and because we think it's the right thing for the location.
I mean, St Helens Council, they bought the shopping centre.
Good example.
Mine was ideal actually, because I was refinancing. I just done 15 apartments and had a big 4,500 square foot retail. I think they paid 30 odd million for it. Mine was about 10 yards away, so when the valuer came round, I made sure he was aware of that valuation. It didn't help.
It often doesn't.
No. So what initiatives do you participate in to positively impact the community? So you've talked about your commercial units that you have. Is there things that you do to help the lettings in those areas, or what's your strategy, I guess?
So again, in Saint, we are trying to, we try and create a different operator in each of our units, because you walk through quite a few town centres, don't you? It's just takeaways and nail salons and beauty. So we try not to get, we have got them, but we try and get a different collection of operators. As I say, in those secondary markets, it is still tough. I'm hoping these business rates, etc., does spearhead something and, encourages people to come through with different uses. But I say that the residential aspect, I mean, we invest in heavily in St Helens at the moment, and that the rentals there are flying, really flying. We get a lot from Salford actually, Liverpool, man, because people see it as the central, you've got Amazon there, etc. So it is quite a central location. So in terms of commuter town, it's really good. As I say, the commercial aspects hasn't quite caught up yet. Saying that, we're fully occupied in the commercials. It just takes banging down a lot of doors to attract people to come and have a look at the unit. But I think now with that regeneration with Muse English Cities Fund, who did a lot in Salford, now putting that together, and it has just they have just started the regeneration plan. So hopefully that does come through to fruition, and that investment I made 6 years ago could be something totally different, hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay. And I read that you aspire to reach over 400 units by next year. So where's the next big place? What gives you insight?
Well, we're still in. So we buy a lot of our sites ahead.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 sites that we're in design now. We should be submitting planning, hopefully one before year end. One will be early Q1 next year. That's going to be for another 70 units. And we're in discussions on a site now somewhere in Liverpool, which hopefully that comes through. That'll be 60 odd apartments as well, which will see us well over that threshold we've set.
And what's the wider vision? What's the goals? Where do you want to get to with it all?
I think we're just going to keep adding. While we're sort of the way I see it, we're sort of creating a machine where I've got you throw the property in. We've got our own construction team. They can churn out the product, then goes across into our lettings team, can churn it out, that goes into. So if I've got the right infrastructure and team in place, we can keep throwing assets through it in theory. But as we discussed earlier, people don't know.
People
are,
people are.
They can be the cog in the machine sometimes.
And any in adding to that, anywhere outside of Merseyside, where would you go to next?
Because we have our own in-house team on everything, we try and keep everything within touching distance. Now I'm just in that way of operating. I think everything would need to be operated. We have looked at schemes outside, but again, because we're not in the experience of using contracting out, we have kept everything within the location of Merseyside still at the moment. And we don't get too over ambitious. So once we've got those sites coming through, we tend to not acquire them for a little bit. We make sure we deliver those sites, because I think well, it's quite well known in the news, isn't it? You see a lot of developers and they seem to be buying sites everywhere. And then, the first crane goes up and everything stops. So we make sure we get enough in and then concentrate on delivering. Because I think that's important when you're dealing with councils, etc. You want to show you can deliver.
Indeed.
It's not just about buying a load of sites and putting some nice CGIs together. You've got to deliver them.
And also having those relationships, as you said, there's people to manage in this process, and the more places you go to, the more stakeholders you've got, and the more relationships you've got to manage. So actually, I think your approach is a good one. If you're focusing on a fewer areas, those areas better, so it avoids making mistakes, because in a lot of places, one street might be very different from a parallel street, but unless you're there and you know that market, you don't know the nuances. And also, like you say, delivering in a certain area. I think it takes a lot of time it can take a lot of time for local authorities to believe in you and trust you as a reliable party that delivers, and you've got to earn that right a lot of the time. So if you're keep going to new places, then I think that's a little bit more difficult as well. So keeping it all focused, yes, you've got the economies of scale, but you've got the other benefits as well.
I mean, we have a lot of confidence as well, because obviously we've done, I think it's 8 projects in the town centre in St Helens. Because I don't sell anything, we can be pretty bullish and confident on what our NGDV is, because we've just had 7 valuations done previously, so we know what sort of pound per square foot, we know what yield value is going to give us. So we can reverse engineer the process and understand what our costs need to be to make it work.
Yeah, no, really important. Yeah, that market knowledge. It goes back to a question that I asked you about what's been the success factor, and I guess the outcome of that was knowing your stuff, doing your due diligence, knowing your location, knowing the rules, and it goes a step further there, like you say, about knowing as best you can where build costs are likely to come out at in that particular location. So, knowledge, not location.
Yeah. I'll use that one.
It's on record. That
Well, like legal in general.
Very good. So, any tips for anyone who might be wanting to do what you've done, and might be in a profession and thinking, I want to grow a portfolio and want to take those steps?
I mean, obviously what I did to grow to the numbers, I'd like to say a lot of it is knowledge, but there is a lot of luck as well.
I am having that. You're not having
it. We acquired stuff, quite cheap, coming out of the crash. And, there's a lot of difference there, whether you'd make that sort of markup these days. But if you were looking to invest in property and you're not necessarily in that industry, I would, seek advice. There is still money to be made. It's still a financially sound investment, but make sure you surround yourself with the right people, right managing agents, etc., so they can guide you away from some of the expensive pitfalls you can make, which, and I've made them, and I was a trained solicitor.
Yeah.
And, if you don't tick that box or this, it it soon add up, and you've got your mortgage payments coming out and no rent coming in and court costs going back out. So I would advise anyone to do it, to, take advice and make sure, and understand what your investment philosophy is. Are you doing it to be the next Donald Trump, or are you doing it to, supplement your income, and, it's a nice little pension maybe back, when you're older in life, so you just want to get to 5 stable properties. So it's understand what your investment philosophy is as well.
Yeah, very important. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us today. It's been great to learn a bit about yourself and what you've done, and let's hope you keep hitting those targets and adding to that pot.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if you like this episode, please check out all our previous episodes on our website, www.searchproperty.co.uk, and subscribe to us where you get your podcasts. Thank you.